Okay, so before I leave Los Angeles, I wanted to film one more video while I'm packing, so forgive all the junk on the bed. I got the chance to go hands-on with Pragmata. You know, Pragmata, it's that game that sort of looks like Capcom's Death Stranding meets The Last of Us. It's got a guy named Hugh that walks around in an astronaut spacesuit, and he has a little girl that hangs on his back who's actually an android named Diana, and you're trying to escape a space station on the moon and get back to Earth. Pretty straightforward premise, interesting enough. But one of the more interesting things about this game is that it has been in development hell for a while, and a lot of people thought that it was just going to be abandoned not that long ago. You see, it was originally announced back like June 11th or 10th of 2020. This was revealed back in the dark times. And it was originally targeting a release window of 2022, which obviously it didn't launch in, and then they delayed it to 2023, obviously didn't hit that date. And in June of 2023, Capcom said that the game had been delayed indefinitely. And I remember stories being written around that time where people were like, just a matter of time before they abandon it, shut it down, move on. Cool experiment. Maybe it was their attempt at like their own Last of Us style game where this like hardened, grizzled man learns to trust again through this anthropomorphized robot little girl, daughter, whatever. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting, but I don't know what's happened. Like it's been just like on, completely missing, AFK for a couple of years now. And then they just came out at Summer Games Fest with a new trailer, and now they're saying they're hitting a 2026 release date. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We've literally been here before, so we'll see if they actually hit that window. But that brings me to the demo. I did get to go hands-on with the game, and so did another member of my team, my editor/brother, Jacob. He also got to go hands-on with it at another station in this little demo area. And that'll be important later. And basically what this demo was what appeared to be a very early section of the game where Diana basically helps repair and reboot Hugh, who has received damage somehow. And after he comes to, she hops onto his back and you are introduced to the basics of combat. How combat works in this game is pretty straightforward. Hugh has a gun with like 6, I believe, rounds, maybe 8, but I think 6, and they recharge slowly over time. The other 3 guns that we got access to do not recharge over time and have to be picked up in order to be like recharged. You have to basically swap them out with different guns. These are things like basically a shotgun that has 5 rounds in it. In order to get more rounds, you have to go pick up a new one, hit the blinds, from a downed enemy, etc., etc. However, you can't just deal damage to enemies by shooting at them. You need to break open their armor first. And the way you do this is not by hitting weak points or anything. The way you do this is by using Diana to hack into the robots to open up their armor so that you can deal damage, which is certainly a cool idea. And how it works functionally is that you hold down left trigger to basically target an enemy, and then it opens up a separate little sub-screen almost, a square of a puzzle that you have to solve using square, triangle, circle, X. And it works very similarly to the BioShock minigames to unlock stuff back in the day, where it's like you have to route the water through the pipes in a very particular way around certain obstacles and stuff. It works similarly to that. And effectively what you're doing is just trying to hack the enemies, and maybe you have to go through this one item, and if you go through this cell or this square, it is like a little shield icon, and that will break their defense for longer once you hack open the robot's armor. So you have more time to deal damage and stuff like that. It's a cool idea, honestly. I actually, when I saw this, I was like, ooh, that's kind of interesting. That's a new thought. That's clever. And it's different for every enemy. Some enemies, it might be a 4x4 grid. Other enemies might be a 3x3 grid. I imagine towards the end of the game, or even just boss fights, maybe it's a 9x9 grid or something. And it's really complicated and tough to figure out. Some of the guns, like one of the guns, for example, is able to slow down enemies. So if there's multiple enemies in the arena, in the room that you're in, you can fire that, slow them down, so you have more time to do the hacking minigame, because it doesn't pause time when you pull that open. It's an interesting idea. It's pretty clever. And it helps her feel more useful, and it helps the player feel connected to her through gameplay. I like it, at least in concept. What wasn't clear to me is how well it would hold up over like a 10, 15, 20, 30 hour campaign. It's fine in a 20-minute demo, But I could see this becoming really, really annoying if you're just fighting waves of enemies and it's just this mini game over and over and over again. Because like I did it dozens of times in my 20-minute demo, it felt like. Maybe it wasn't practically dozens, but it felt like dozens of times. And I can only imagine if you're fighting waves and waves and waves and waves of enemies, it could get either really, really annoying and just frustrating to the point where you want to turn it off, or maybe it's just super satisfying and fun and you just want to keep going. Maybe it's like the highlight of the combat system. I don't know, because I only played a little sliver, but I wanted to throw that out there that I got the feeling it could get old after a little while, at least in my opinion. But the structure of the demo is pretty straightforward. Literally, we went from room to room, eventually having to unlock like 5 or 6 locks on a big door by doing a mini game similar to the breaking and hacking puzzle mini game, where we had to just kind of follow a few button prompts, triangle, triangle, X, and then that opens the door and unlocks this lock on this one door. And we fought through waves of enemies in these rooms and moved into a boss arena after doing that, where the demo ended. Like we got to the boss, a little sort of cutscene played. I was like, ooh, here's where they finish it. They finish on the boss fight. That's smart. Finish on a high note. And I fired 1 round with my shotgun. And right at that point, the demoist, the guy from Capcom, leaned over and pressed the start button on the controller to pause it and said, that's the end of the demo. Can't go further. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, that's a bummer. But I was like, okay. And he said, thank you for understanding, it's just where we're cutting off. Thank you for not making a scene. And I was like, who's making a scene? Like, you're inviting us in. Are there people making a scene? Like, what are you talking about? But apparently there were people that were very upset. They weren't allowed to continue playing, which is just funny to me. It's literally a privilege to be there, not a right, but whatever. But it was still surprising that you got to the cool part of the demo, the cool thing that I wanted to see, which was how does this combat breaking puzzle minigame thing, how does that translate to a big difficult enemy and big boss fight? Like, does it translate in a really cool way where they have a really complicated breaking mechanism or many little things that have to be hacked into? You hack into a leg and then that opens the armor there. You break them there. That slows them down, making it easier to hack into the big stuff. Like, there's interesting ideas to explore there, but we didn't get to see any of it. They cut it off right there. And that was generally the vibe I got, was just that they are very, very tight-lipped about how this game is set up. And that might be for sake of spoilers. It might also just be that the game still has problems after being in development hell for a while. Because bear in mind, they announced this in 2020, and they were targeting release in 2022. Typical dev timeframes are like 4 to 5 years nowadays on the AAA side. So that would put the initial work on this game around 2018, maybe. And if that's to be believed, like, this game, by the time it launches, will have been in development for 8 years. Like, that's a good long time. Like, on the AAA space, that's enough to make a game and a sequel. And I mean, that's how long this game has been in development hell, it seems. So maybe that's, also being reflected elsewhere in the structure of the game. I don't know. But I left the demo feeling just kind of like, okay. Like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't wowing me. It didn't really impress me. I left it feeling kind of conflicted and like I just wanted to see more, but not in the way where like, that was so good, I want more. I was just like, I feel like we just did the tutorial for the demo. Like, I feel like we only just barely started and then we're cut off. So it didn't really do much when it comes to convincing me that they've fixed some of those problems that presumably plagued the game once it was delayed so many times. That being said, I also want to point out one thing, but add an important caveat. The performance for my version of the demo was quite poor. My game was dropping from the 30 frames it was rendering at, and it was plummeting down into the mid-20s, a lot of the time during combat and sequences where there was a lot happening on screen. Stutters were a problem, things like that. However, I mentioned earlier, my brother Jacob, he was playing on another station. He said that he did not have those problems, and his version of the game ran pretty locked solid at 30 frames. I don't know if it was just my version of the game that was having problems. I don't know if it was my specific hardware. I believe it was running on a PlayStation 5, but I'm not sure. So I don't know if it was just me, or if maybe he was really lucky that his ran well, or maybe his was set to performance mode or something and mine was. I genuinely don't know, but my rule of thumb is if I experience something, I'll tell you. Like, if I ran into a problem, I will tell you. whether that's good or bad. Like, that's just what I'm going to do. And if it's updated later, or there's some update I can provide later for how it was fixed or how it was walked back or whatever, I'll provide that update. But as for right now, all I can tell you is that the version I played on my screen was struggling to maintain 30, and theirs was apparently locked pretty solidly at 30. Who knows? Who knows? But I saw that, and I need to tell you, because that's how this works. However, like, overall, I just left Pragmata feeling like, okay. It was a very kind of game. Not bad, not particularly good, just It might change, it might be one of those games once they show more, once they get a little more confident or whatever, and they can share more, maybe it just takes off into the stratosphere and it ends up that this is like their Last of Us or Death Stranding or whatever it is. I don't really know. It's just a matter of time, and we'll see. But I left this preview feeling like it wasn't the best preview demo build. Demos are typically supposed to intrigue the viewer to the point where they want more, and the point where they're willing to add it to their wish list and continue checking it out and following it very closely. But this one, I just felt like it didn't really achieve that. Instead, I left it being like, okay, well, when's our session at Resident Evil? That's kind of where it left me. So I'll leave it there. But let me know what you thought of Pragmata in the comment section below. I want to know if I'm alone in thinking that it looks just kind of odd. There's just something about it that's just weird, It's just a weird game. It doesn't mean it's bad, it's just weird. So let me know what you think of all of this in the comment section below. If you're really interested, we can continue covering it more closely. So I'll look out for those comments. Until next time, my friends, stay safe. I love you all desperately. You're wonderful, and you make my dreams a reality every single day. Truly, truly, thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.